All right, ladies and gentlemen, the time is upon us. Welcome to the MLB Guardcast, episode number 10. I am Mike Vorhies. Along with me, as always, Bryan Shaw. Bryan, could you make it stop raining, please? I ask kindly.
I wish I could make it warm up. I wish I could make it stop being so
Right.
windy. The amount of yard cleanup I've had to do over the past couple of weeks has been quite a bit. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
this
it's not over.
spring
It's not over yet.
after a really warm February, I was hoping that we were going to have a promising spring, but so far not so much.
No. Now, and I went on vacation earlier this week. I was hoping to bring home some of the warmer weather that I encountered, but unfortunately it didn't get the memo. So it is what it is, unfortunately. Yard work is going to be fun after this weekend.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But we have baseball. We
We
kicked off the
have
season.
baseball. The MLB 2023 baseball season is upon us. Opening day was yesterday. Bryan, can you smell it?
I smell
Spring is
hot
just
dogs.
around spring is just around the corner. I know you'll be at the ballpark here really, really soon. I know you just went to Arizona. You're going to fill us in about spring training, but I have a question for you before we get started, Bryan. Are you or do you know someone that is looking to spruce up your company's logo or website? Are you looking for help when it comes to digital arts and marketing? Do I have the business for you? You have to look no further than Nova Digital Arts. You can check out their work at NovaDigitalArts at iCloud.com. Tell them the MLB Guardcast sent you. Nova Digital Arts located in Greene, Ohio. Give Derek a call, our good friend Derek, 234-716-1687. They have been creating magic since 2007. Thank you again to Nova Digital Arts for another wonderful season. Bryan, it's time. It is time. We've waited. It's been months. We've had a
We've
few guests.
speculated, we've
We
talked about the roster and what
we
we think it's
did.
going to be. Now we don't have to think anymore because we have a roster, we have a lineup, and we had our first game.
We
And it
did.
went about as well as most of their first games go.
Well, the Guards opened the 2023 campaign, unfortunately, with the L against the Seattle Mariners. I mean, Shane Bieber took the start. We knew that our opening day workhorse. I mean, he pitched okay. Seemed like he got into some jams, but was able to get out of it. But unfortunately, the offense just couldn't get it done. 4 hits. And then you have the epic meltdown of Wild Thing, James Karinchak, but we can discuss that in a little bit. But it was a late one, 10-10 on the West Coast. Did you stay up? Did you watch the whole thing, Bryan?
I did. I
Yeah.
stayed up all night. So I was curious how that was going to go. And I will admit, I feel like it took some of the excitement out of the day. Because there's something about those 4 o'clock starts where maybe you play a little hooky from work at the end of the day and
Yeah.
and you log off a little bit sooner, or you bring your laptop and you're just kind of hitting the mouse, or you head home and you get some friends over for a couple of beers and you make hot dogs on the grill for those first away games. Everybody was in bed. Or
Yeah.
if you weren't in bed, you were laying on the couch with your blanket and fighting staying awake,
Yeah.
especially since it was a 0-0 game going into the seventh inning or eighth inning or whatever it was. They had an opportunity at the end. They strung together a couple of hits. Ahmed and Jose both got hits, and then Josh Bell up, and would it have just been epic if he would have been able to blast one and tie up the game.
That would have been
Um,
pretty good.
he did get a hold of one, but he was way, way ahead of it. I don't know if you saw, but he launched it into like the third deck, but way, way foul. Um,
Yeah.
that man has power. I think we will see those moments. It just didn't come yesterday, but I do think the big storyline from yesterday, if there's anything that you want to take away from the first game of 162, is Karinchak going to have problems with the pitch clock?
Yeah. Well, we're gonna talk about it in a little bit. Let's dive into it right now before we'll talk about spring training. I know you were there. You can give us a little insight. the Guardians have spent some money. Do I read this correctly? We've spent some money. A team
Yeah,
with one of the tightest checkbooks in all of baseball. Two
but do they,
contract
or do they
extensions.
just spend smart?
I love that you said that. I was going to say that exact same thing. And then we'll talk about the extensions. And then, of course, the injury bug. We've already been hit by it. We'll see how it affects us in the long run. I think we'll be okay. But let's talk about James Karinchak and last night. One of the new rules that baseball has this year in 23 is the pitch clock. Brian, can you explain a little bit for those that don't know what the pitch clock is?
Yep. So once the pitcher gets the ball back, if there's nobody on base, they have 15 seconds to make a pitch. If there is somebody on base, they have 20 seconds to make a pitch. If they do not, then it's an automatic ball. The same thing goes for the batter. They have to be in the box and make eye contact, which is a weird distinction. But then it goes the opposite way. If they're not in the box in time, if they're not engaged in time, then they would be assessed a strike. And there was discussions in the offseason or even last season with James Karinchak because of his, juggling the ball, playing with his hat, grabbing his hair, his little twitchiness and his things that he takes a long time in between pitches.
That's an
And
understatement.
he
He takes his time. There's no doubt.
disengages from the rubber, gets back on, calls timeout, things like that. So he was going to have to hone that in. And apparently it wasn't a big deal in the spring. He also cut his hair, which was interesting because remember, he was always grabbing at the back of his hair. He cut his hair.
Of course, he'd take his hands and he'd leaf them through.
So
like
now I
noticed
he was going like, under the brim of his hat where his sweat's collecting to get some sweat and then, get a little stickiness on his fingers. But I think it was the combination of being high leverage. It's 0-0. And plus, let's add in that I'm sure he was frazzled by the missed call of the foul tip that got knocked out of the glove. And now you have a base runner. So you got a base runner. The crowd's going at you. That was the loudest we had heard the crowd all night long.
It sounded really like an October game. Like this was the ALCS winners going to the World Series type atmosphere. I mean, the fans in Seattle were in it from the very beginning. All game long, it seemed like the volume was going up and up and up. And I've never heard a crowd that loud. It felt like we were watching.
And then in that moment, I mean, I was surprised they weren't just counting down the clock to get into his head. But the crowd was really loud, high leverage situation, and then he's throwing wild because of it. He's throwing wild. He did seem to hone it in a little bit. Mike Zunino called timeout, tried to calm him down, but obviously very frazzled. And then he gives up the home run. Now, at that point, the extra baseman didn't matter because it would have just been 2-0 instead of 3-0. But I think that whole scenario just really, really threw him off his game. He's got to figure that out. You can't be. The first word that comes to mind is fragile. I don't want to be that harsh, but like you just can't. You have to be calmer in those situations.
Yeah. Well, you figure in spring it's not as intense. I mean, guys are kind of working through things, finding the right arm angle, all of that. So I wonder if, yes, the pitch clock kind of played into that a little bit, but also too, I think high level stress. He just couldn't handle it last night. I mean, great job by Zunino calling a timeout, trying to get him under control, but you could just see in his demeanor and he was that when he got hit with the pitch clock violation, it completely changed everything for him. I don't know if he thought he had more time. I don't know, but yeah, I agree with you 100%. Obviously, it's game one. You got to shake the cobwebs off a little bit. We know spring training is exactly that. It's spring training. But now we're in the real thing. The games count, stats count. You've got to be better. You got to do better in that situation, especially when the team is counting on you at the back end of that bullpen to be an anchor. you can't sink the team like that. That's something you don't want. We knew this could be an issue with Karen Jack because of the pitch clock, but it's gotta change quick.
Yeah, I think like what you said, there's just no way to simulate that in spring. He didn't seem to have too much of an issue with the pitch clock, but there wasn't that combination of pitch clock and high leverage and crowd noise, because attendance at spring training games are like 3 to 5,000.
Mhm.
They're AAA style ballparks, AA style ballparks, and they're really never full. So,
Yeah.
not a lot of noise. Just no way to simulate it. So hopefully he learns. I mean, he's gonna have plenty of opportunity. Tito's the kind of guy that will just throw you right back out there and basically make you forget it.
Yep.
We'll see how he responds. If this becomes, a chronic thing and it happens 3 times in a row, you're probably gonna see Trevor Stephan in that spot as opposed to
Yeah.
Karinchak. And Karinchak will be more of a 5th or 6th inning guy.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the ERA can only go down from here. I mean, he was charged with all 3 runs, so his ERA currently sits at 81,
81.
which
I didn't even know
that's
if he
pretty
got. I was
high.
gonna say, was it 27? Because I figured he had at least gotten maybe
Yeah, no,
maybe
he
an
got
outing.
he's hit with the 81 ERA. I mean, it's first game of the year, so he can only go down. Let's hope,
Yeah.
but we'll see. I mean, it 162 games, guys. I'm not gonna hit the panic button. We learned that last year. You don't
No,
hit the panic button
and I
yet.
tweeted, I have seen some overreaction on Twitter already, which I guess that's what Twitter's for. But
That's
I had
normal.
tweeted out that if you treat every baseball game like it's an NFL game, or every baseball game like it's a playoff game, you will go insane over 6 months.
You will.
I
And
mean,
let's be honest too. The Guardians were facing a very good pitcher last night in Luis Castillo. He looked dominant against us. And we know that the Mariners have a very good bullpen, and they proved that last night. So we're going, guys. These are high. I mean, if you've seen the rankings, the Guardians are about midway in the rankings, and the Mariners are slightly ahead of us. We're going to face this all year. We have to play everybody this year. That's the first. We're going to be playing teams we haven't played in a while, and we're in for this kind of excitement. Buckle up, keep your hands, feet, everything it's a roller coaster, guys. It's baseball. Sit back, relax, enjoy it. It's game 1. It's okay.
yeah,
Tonight, game 2, again, on at 10:10, but it's a Friday night, and it's on for free tonight on MLB.TV. We are the free game of the week. Hunter Gaddis, who? Versus Robbie Ray of the Mariners. We'll talk about Hunter Gaddis here in a little bit. But Brian, you were able to go to Arizona. You decided to go to spring training.
yeah,
I know
and
you were trying to make the 40 man. I get that. You were wanting the guards to kind of give you another chance.
you
I
know
get that,
what?
but
If Karinchak continues to struggle, somebody got cut
yeah,
from
he
the White
did.
Sox.
He
So
did. Your
um,
namesake.
I know you
Yes.
said
So,
we were gonna talk about Hunter Gaddis here in a second, but actually, one of the games that I went to was a Hunter Gaddis start.
oh,
So I was
perfect.
able to see him. I think he'll do just fine. He went 3 2/3, gave up 3 hits, 1 earned run, and 6 strikeouts. And I think one of those earned runs, if I remember correctly, it was charged to him
Mm,
because he was pulled with a runner on. So he
okay.
didn't give up the hit that gave up the run. Um, Michael Kelly did.
And
So
he's not with the team. So
yeah.
that's
So
so
that's
why don't you kind of give us a little recap of your week there? What did you
yeah,
see? What you like? Would you not like? What are
sure.
some of the names that maybe we want to keep an eye on potentially?
So I went to 4 games. We were initially only going to go to 3, but we decided, you know what, we have some time. Let's go see another ballpark. Let's go to a 4th game. And it was a lot of fun, and I went to some practices, and we ended up seeing Jose Ramirez out in the wild, just kind of, enjoying some dinner. So that was really cool. My wife almost missed him.
No, no.
Almost didn't see him. I was trying to be cool about it. Like, I was like, Jose's right over there. And she's like, where, who's where? And it got to the point where like I was like gesturing And then he saw me, saw my hat, saw my jersey. I think we were the only two Guardians fans in the restaurant. But then he waved, and then my wife saw him, and then she ran over to him and talked to him for a little bit. But yeah, he was super.
Did you get a picture? Did you get a picture with him?
She did. She did.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I because they, long story, but she did.
Okay.
But with the spring was fun. It was good to see. This kind of goes into the roster construction, but I was surprised that we didn't keep a fifth outfielder, and that we kept three catchers, because I didn't see a lot from. I mean, I guess it was obvious they were going to keep Cam Gallagher, but I didn't see much from him. I also didn't see much from Mabris. And I thought Roman Quinn actually had a pretty good spring from what I saw of him. I looked at his batting average before we came on today, and it wasn't great in the spring, but he played a really good field. And I thought that if they were going to keep a fifth outfielder, he was going to make it over Richie, because he was a veteran, and I figured they were going to do the same thing with Tyler Freeman that they did with Richie. You go to Columbus, you get every day at bats. It doesn't have a lot of value for you to sit the bench.
Right.
When Tyler Freeman made his debut, I was in San Diego. I went to the San Diego games, and we ended up sitting right by his family, like his grandparents and his family members and stuff. And I knew it was his family because they had these like makeshift t-shirts on. Like they were Guardians t-shirts, but then they had like, Freeman and his number on the back, and he's number 2. And I was like, that's got to be his family, because nobody has Freeman t-shirts. Well, almost the same thing happened in Arizona at one of the games that he was playing in, except it was like his cousins and stuff, and a lot of younger people, but they were actually wearing his jerseys this time. And so just an interesting thing, that how you kind of run into people and end up talking to people. My big takeaways, I'd say, is Gabriel Arias looks for real. At least in spring, he looked really good. Jimenez wasn't there because he was playing in the World Baseball Classic, so Gabriel Arias was playing second base for a lot of the time. I know he's a natural shortstop, and there was the question is, could he play second base? When last year, when they were kind of figuring out what to do with that middle infield of, Ahmed Rosario and Jimenez and Arias. And so Arias looks just fine at second base. I thought he looked really good there. And, if however that plays out, if Jimenez then moves over to short, or they want to leave Jimenez at second, they've got options. But Arias looked really good. Freeman looked really good as well. And Will Brennan is, I think, going to be the big surprise for everybody. He's going to be kind of this year's Quan, this year's Oscar. He had a hit yesterday.
He did.
But he's like, when you think athlete, he looks like an athlete. I know I'm going back to like the old Moneyball, like what you don't do with baseball players. Like, what do you mean he looks good? No, he looks like an athlete. His base running is smart. I think he's going to be really good. And there was we talked about that a little bit earlier in the offseason, because Tito had mentioned that at least at one point they were talking about having Josh Naylor play some right field. But I think that was before they realized the ascension of Will Brennan, because if you're going to have a lefty outfielder, you're just going to put Will Brennan out there. There's no point in putting Josh Naylor out there.
Right.
So he'll probably split duties with Oscar, but he looked really good as well. So it was a great experience. My second time being there since 2019. Grabbed this shirt from GV Art. It's there's a much bigger logo on the back, but was there for St. Patrick's Day as well, and then did some ATV, UTV,
Nice.
driving through the desert mountains, which was a lot of fun. So that was kind of like our big, outside of baseball, go do something. Last time we were there, we went to Grand Canyon, went to the Red Rocks, did all those different things. So we were a little more chill this time around. But we were only there for a few days as opposed to like a whole week.
Well, that's awesome. I'm excited. And we know that the Guardians are loaded with talent. We've talked about it multiple episodes. Catch up if you've missed them. We had talked a little bit earlier, contract extensions. The Guardians spending money, locking players up, which is something we're not really familiar with. Last year, they locked up Jose. That was an incredible day. And then the rumor circulated that they're deep in talks with multiple players. They listed Jimenez, they listed Stefan, they listed Tristan McKenzie, they listed a few others, and you're like, what? In the wait a minute, who is this team? Who's running things? Brian, care to share?
I think, yeah. So Jimenez was the big one. Locked up Andreas
Yes.
Jimenez for 7 years, of a little over $100 million. I think there's some options. So basically, they get rid of his arbitration years, and then they gave him three years on top of that. I believe is what it is. Trevor Stephan, former Rule 5 draft pick from the New York Yankees.
The Yankees can suck it, by the way. Thanks for giving us Trevor Stephan
Yeah.
for literally nothing. Thank you.
Well, but that's what happens with Rule 5. It's a nice little balance. Yeah. We lost some guys in the Rule 5 this past year because, when you have that much talent and you don't have a place for them and they're not on the 40, they can get grabbed up. Keep in mind, Oscar Gonzalez did not get 40 protected last year. And if there was a Rule 5 draft, he might not be on the team.
That's very true.
That's the weird thing that you got to think about sometimes with this. So Trevor Stevens, I believe, is a 4-year deal. It's like 10-ish million. So
10 million. He's 2 club options for
so
Mr.
2.5 each year. So that's a nice extension to lock him up. Like you said, there was rumors about Quan and Ahmed Rosario, which was kind of surprising. Tristan McKenzie. I'm sure the McKenzie stuff probably got put on hold because of his injury. But they spent last year too. So they locked up Jose. They locked up Miles Straw for 5 years, and then they locked up Emmanuel Clase. Plus, now we have a minority owner. So, he had to make a purchase, and so there was some cash on hand. Because keep in mind, just because an owner is worth a certain amount of money doesn't mean they have all that money to just withdraw from a bank account to pay players. You got to sell something. You got to trade in some stock or, whatever rich people do. But the point is, I think this is their rebirth. This is their renaissance. It's when I was pulling dates of when they've locked up contracts, and I don't think they're necessarily done because they have signed contracts into the first week of the season before. Miles Straw was after opening day.
Yep.
And so was, I think, Jason Kipnis. But this is very similar to early 2010s Indians or even 90s Indians when they locked up Kluber and locked up Kipnis and locked up Santana and locked up. They're just identifying core pieces. They're getting guys signed through arbitration years so that they don't have to go through the arbitration process with them. They're just signed. They're under contract. I think it's a really, really smart move. And, a lot of people gave them grief about Francisco Lindor, but there was rumors that didn't matter if they offered him $300 million. He was going to New York anyway.
Right.
And in that trade, you got Ahmed Rosario and Andreas Jimenez. Now you've just signed Andreas Jimenez, who last year had a better WAR than Lindor did, for about a third of the contract. And you've been able to take that money, pay Jose, and sign a free agent like Josh Bell, a free agent like Mike Zunino, extend Miles Straw, extend Emmanuel Clase.
Right.
So you got to ask yourself, it kind of stunk to lose Lindor, but if he's going to demand that kind of money, what would you rather have? Like all those guys I just named off, or Mike Trout and no playoff appearances?
Right. And that's what I was getting ready to say. Let's not forget Jimenez had a phenomenal year last year. The Guardians were in the playoffs. Where were the Mets? Weren't they on the outside looking in? Exactly. A team one player doesn't make the team. Yes, Francisco Lindor is a great talent, but give me Ahmed Rosario, give me Jimenez, give me Quan, give me those type players, because what we saw last year, that was the nucleus that pretty much ran the team. And I'm all for it.
And I hope they can extend Steven Kwan. I think he's kind of in the same boat as Andreas Jimenez. Maybe they want one more year to worry about. We can move on now to some of the injury bug, because that does apply to one of the guys they were rumored at extending, and Tristan McKenzie.
Gotta have some bad news to go with the good news. Baseball has started, but Injuries are a part of the game. Two big names for the Guardians that are currently injured. Left-handed specialist Sam Henches, who is week to week with left shoulder inflammation. There is no timetable as of yet for his return. So with that, a new lefty is in the Guardians bullpen. We'll talk about him in a minute. So hopefully Sam Hench's his inflammation goes away, because he was really good last year. I hate to say it, he was really good last year.
He was.
And we need him back for sure. But the big name, obviously, Brian, as you has mentioned, Tristan McKenzie, he is out up to 8 weeks with a strain of his right teres major muscle, which, for those who don't have any clue about the human anatomy and how arm and muscles work, like me, I had to do a little research. It is actually it connects the shoulder blade to your upper arm. So you kind of need that in order to pitch.
It's the back of the shoulder. Like it's behind the shoulder, one of those muscles. So I'm going to take responsibility for this. This was my fault. I'm sorry, Tristan.
Whoa. I'm confused here. What's going on?
The morning of his injury.
Okay.
I am a bobblehead collector. I happened to see on the Facebook bobblehead group that somebody was selling their Tristan McKenzie bobblehead from the Lake County Captains. And since the Guardians, I held off on that one because since the Guardians at the time hadn't announced who the bobbleheads for this upcoming season was, I was going to see if Tristan was a part of them before I got the Lake County one. And then I saw somebody selling one. I was like, hey, I want that. I'm going to buy it. And later that day, he has an injury. So,
Brian, honestly, how are you going to know that? I mean, you can't take that there. I mean, injuries are a part of baseball.
Nope, I jinxed
I'm not letting you take the fall, my friend. I'm not going to let you do that.
No,
it happens.
The good news is, I believe Andre Knott had said that he feels good, and that so the minimum 2 week was how long he was shut down from throwing. And Tristan had said, I guess, to Andre, he feels good and he's confident that he will be able to begin throwing after that 2 week shutdown. So then it's the up to 8 weeks because, how long does it take him to get ramped back up? That 2 weeks could have been 3 weeks or 4 weeks if he starts, throwing weighted balls again and he's still feeling some tension, or if they rescan him or whatever they do and they're still showing, a strain. But
isn't this the same injury that Shane Bieber suffered last year? I want to say it was that major teres muscle. Bieber's could have been the opposite arm, but I think it's the same similar injury.
I feel like this is like the full tear that Clevenger had.
Oh, okay. That makes
sense.
But
his wasn't a strain. His was like a tear that made him lose like half the season. But I want to say it was, that like back muscle.
It's a major thing. But so he'll be back. It's okay. That's why we got depth. Really quickly, I want to run through our 2023 Guardians so that who's playing where. The Guardians, shocking a lot, but I think a lot of teams are doing this, carrying 3 catchers. So Mike Zunino, the free agent from formerly of the Mariners and Tampa Bay Rays, is in Cleveland. We knew that. Cam Gallagher, former backup for Kansas City, will be the number 2 catcher. And then Mabris Viloria, also formerly of the Kansas City Royals, a left-handed hitting catcher. He'll be our 3rd catcher. So I think a lot of pinch hitting we could see to start the season.
So I explained this to somebody. They were like, well, are we ever going to see the 3rd catcher? And I said, probably not. Mm-hmm. And here's why. So if you pinch hit for Zunino and say Arias comes in and, pinch hits, or Will Brennan or somebody, and then you've got to put in Cam Gallagher. Well, I think this ended up being the case last year at one point, where when you do that and you pinch hit guys, you no longer have a backup catcher. If your backup catcher gets hurt, there's nobody to replace him because you can't put the starter back in because you've already pulled him. And wasn't it like Ernie Clement that was like the emergency 3rd catcher? So you then need that guy to basically just be there in case of emergency because you
Mhm.
pinched hit for your catcher.
Yeah.
So
It's a
that's
it's
kind
a
of the logic
defensive
there.
move.
Yeah.
So then obviously our two first basemen obviously considered DH as well. You have the big free agent signing and Josh Bell, and our favorite friend, mine as well. I want the smoke, Josh Naylor. They will split time at first, pop and DHing as well. Second base, obviously the newest millionaire in Cleveland, Andres Jimenez, with his huge contract extension. Rosario again at short, Jose at third, Stephen Kwan in left, Miles Straw in center. The big thing last night, I saw Will Brennan got the start in right field against the Mariners. Oscar Gonzalez sat the bench. A little bit of a head scratcher, but I
I'd
think,
say righty lefty matchup. I think you're gonna see.
and that's what people were saying last
Yeah,
night. And I think there's a lefty on the mound tonight. Robbie Ray is a lefty, so I think
you'll see Oscar.
we'll see SpongeBob in the lineup. Gabriel Arias won the utility job. So I'm very excited to watch him play. Starting pitchers, I mean, these are easy ones. Bieber, Quantrill, Savali, Plesac, Tristan McKenzie, who is hurt. He's replaced by Hunter Gaddis, who had won a bullpen spot. The bullpen will consist, obviously, of Clase, Trevor Stephan, James Karinchak, Nick Sandlin, Eli Morgan, Angel De Los Santos, and lefty Tim Herron, which
Yep, that's
I
the
was
new
pretty
name.
excited. And then Xavier Curry
Mm-hmm.
will take Gaddis' spot in the bullpen since McKenzie is hurt. They're very high on Xavier Curry, so I'm excited to.
He
I
made
hope
his
we get to
debut
see him
last
pitch.
season.
Yep,
You'll probably remember seeing Hunter Gaddis. He's got very,
he
very
pitched
long,
last
flowy
year.
hair.
Yep,
He pitched last year. So if you don't necessarily remember the name, I think you'll remember the hair. I think he'll be just fine spot filling in for McKenzie. The other thing to remember too is it's April. There's going to be
mm-hmm.
rainouts, and there's also days off in there. So he may
Yeah,
not get as many starts as initially thought, because sometimes the team likes to play shenanigans with those rainouts and pitching matchups and things. But
yeah.
I'd say not a lot of
Double.
surprise. The big
Mm-mm.
surprise was the three catchers and not having a fifth outfielder. So I guess in that instance, if you did need a fifth outfielder, you do have Josh Naylor who could play outfield in a pinch for whatever
and
reason.
and Arias has outfield experience as well. He played in the outfield with Columbus last year.
Yeah, they started to move him to
So
the outfield because they didn't have a spot for him. And
right,
and that kind of comes back to, it, like we had mentioned briefly, if you sign Ahmed Rosario to an extension, you have a slew of guys that no longer are going to have a spot on this team, and you basically have to trade them.
yeah,
Tyler Freeman,
and
Brian
maybe,
Rocchio, Jose Tena, like
yeah,
tons of guys that you'd have
maybe
to move.
something's coming, Brian. Maybe
Could be.
if they extend Rosario, it's going to raise a lot of eyebrows. But I've learned to not doubt this team. I
Yeah.
can't. I
But
trust Tito. I trust this front office.
I do like that everything's largely the same. I mean, everybody's kind of in their same spots, and minus a couple of like enhancements here and there, a couple of,
Mm-hmm.
basically think of Josh Bell as replacing Franmil Reyes.
Yep.
And then Mike Zunino is taking over at catcher. And then other than that, like you moved a couple of bullpen pieces, and that was about it. And
You
and
have,
the
and I
team's
think Tim
mostly the
Herron
same.
will. I think Tim Herron's one of those guys that we will need to watch out for a little bit. Um, he's done really well in the minors, and I think that having that lefty in the bullpen is going to be exceptionally needed when we play some of these left-handed power teams. Later on down the line.
Yeah.
Brian, we can't go anywhere yet. We need to give our season predictions, as is the fun that we like to have here. Before I give you who I think will be the MVP and who I think will win the American League Cy Young Award, I believe your Cleveland Guardians, my Cleveland Guardians, will finish this year at 95-67. I believe that they win the Central, and I think this is the year. Brian, I think this is the year of the Guardians. I have them winning the World Series.
That's amazing. That's great to hear. And you had texted me that, like, question mark, World Series question mark.
Yeah.
And then I was curious if you were going to change your expectation after last night.
No,
I was
because
gonna-
it's a long season.
No,
I think
I understand.
if
No.
talk to me in a couple weeks,
Yeah.
if we're not sitting well, that no, I'm kidding. There's just something about last year's team. I think it kind of it will carry over to this year. I really think that this team could surprise a ton of people.
I
The
feel
pieces are
like
there.
I feel like next year is going to be the big expectation year because I think
Okay.
they're gonna really, really go for it next year. So I'm gonna say that they're gonna have a shot at the World Series next year. As
Okay.
for their record, I think they're gonna have. I'm going to stick with 92. I'm going to stick with the same win.
Okay.
I think they're going to be a better team overall because they aren't going to have, the young struggles and the early season struggles, I don't think, as much as they did last year. But keep in mind they're playing more different teams. You're not going to be able to beat up on the AL Central as much. However,
No.
I do think they're going to win the AL Central, and I expect them to I want to see them get to the ALCS at least.
Okay.
Or at least, well, I guess I'd like to see that. I expect them to get back to the ALDS. If they don't make it to the ALCS, I can't be mad. The baseball playoffs are, tend to be a crapshoot. But this year especially, I want to see upgrades at the All-Star break. I want to see them start to go for it. That's my expectation for this year. And so who's your team MVP? And then you mentioned you're teasing a Cy Young from the AL.
Yes. So our MVP of the Cleveland Guardians this year will be Andres Gimenez. I think that he has a lot to prove, and I think he is the man for the job. And I think he can handle himself extremely well, leading us from the second base position. And then my favorite to win the American League Cy Young Award, Tristan McKenzie.
That's a bold prediction. It's a
I
very
like
bold
it.
prediction.
I like it.
So I'm gonna go with Jose, and I know that's probably a lame guess for the team MVP, but I'm gonna say this: if Jose is not the team MVP, I don't think that they can be a World Series contender. He's got to play to his best potential, and his best potential is he'll be the best player on the team. So that's my logic there.
There we go.
As for if a Guardians player could win a Cy Young, I'm going to go with somebody who has won a Cy Young, Shane Bieber, because here's why I think
easy.
this.
Yeah, I get that.
But here's why I say this, because he's gonna win the Cy Young. He's gonna want to get paid. We're not gonna be able to pay him. We're going to have to trade him, and fans are gonna be in a huge uproar about it because that's just the way it goes. So that's why I'm picking him to win the Cy Young.
I like it. It's a bold strategy, Cotton, and I hope it pays off.
All right. Well, we have more games to go. We'll see you guys all in about 2 weeks as we wrap things up here. Really good to talk to you. Like Mike said, if you wanted to hear about some season preview and hear from some of our broadcasters around the area, you can check out our previous shows.
Absolutely. Go Guards. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.